and God hath remembered her iniquities. It's interesting how that in the scriptures it speaks of the sin of man reaching unto heaven, which usually, of course, precedes the judgment of God for that sin. In Ezra chapter 9, verse 6, he said, "O my God, I am ashamed and blush to lift up my face to thee, my God. For our iniquities are increased over our head, and our trespass is grown up unto the heavens." So great the trespass, grown up unto the heavens. Jeremiah 51:9, "We would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Forsake her, and let us go every one into his own country, for her judgment has reached unto heaven, and is lifted up even to the skies." In Jonah chapter 1, verse 2, the Lord said, "Arise, go to Nineveh, that great city, cry against it, for their wickedness is come up before me." And in chapter 16 of Revelation, the great city was divided into 3 parts. The cities of the nations fell, and great Babylon came into remembrance before God to give her the cup of the wine of the fierceness of his wrath. And so their sin had come up before God. You remember in the destruction of Sodom that the Lord said that their sin had come up unto heaven, and they had come down to bring the judgment of God upon the city of Sodom. So the sins have reached unto heaven. God has remembered her iniquities. And so the cry is, reward her, or recompense her, even as she has rewarded you, and double unto her, according to her works in the cup which she hath filled, fill it to her double. So God's judgment, God's wrath to be poured out, and in like that she has vented her wrath against the people of God, God said, render it unto her double. How much she has glorified herself and lived deliciously or delicately, so much torment and sorrow give her, for she says in her heart, I sit a queen, I am no widow, and I shall see no sorrow. Therefore, her plagues will come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire, for strong is the Lord God who judges her. The destruction is going to come suddenly. It speaks of the plague coming in one day. In verse 9, it speaks of the smoke of her burning. Verses 10 and 15 speaks about the merchant standing far off for fear of her torment. For in 1 hour her judgment came, verse 10 and 15. And in verse 17 and 19, 1 hour so great riches have come to naught. It seems like the destruction of Babylon, this commercial city and system, will take place in one day. It will be of such nature that people will be fearful to approach the city. And it speaks about the smoke of her burning. Some of the older commentators, thinking that this perhaps was a reference to Rome, talk about how that that area of Italy has sort of a boiling cauldron underneath Vesuvius and all the tremendous destruction when the volcano erupted, and they sort of interpret this as volcanic action. But as I read it, and knowing of the weapons that are available today, atomic weapons, surely this sounds like it could be the result of a destruction by atomic weapons. As you read it in verse 8, her plagues will come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire, for strong is the Lord God who judges her. The kings of the earth who have committed fornication and have lived deliciously with her, they will bewail her and lament for her when they shall see the smoke of her burning. And they will stand afar off for the fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, the great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour the judgment has come. And so if it were by atomic bomb of some sort, the fear of the radiation that lingers after the explosion would give you to the understanding of why they stood afar off in fear of the torment and not really wanting to approach it for fear of the radiation. The merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buys their merchandise anymore. It's going to be a tremendous blow to the whole commercial system in the world today. Talks about the type of merchandise or trading that is done. The merchandise of gold and silver, precious stones, gems, and pearls, fine linen, purple and silk and scarlet, and all the thionine wood, and all manner of vessels. That's a hardwood that is grown in Africa and used to make little idols and statues. And all manner of vessels of ivory, all manner of vessels of most precious wood, of brass and iron and marble, then the cinnamon and the perfumes, the ointments, the frankincense, and then the wine and the oil, the fine flour, the wheat and the beast and the sheep, horses and chariots, and the slaves and the souls of men, brought into bondage to this whole commercial system. And the commercial system has a lot of you in bondage tonight. Those little credit cards that you have, you're having a hard time making the payments. It has sort of enslaved you, and they keep raising the interest rates, and you find yourself sort of stuck because you're just trying to make it, and the interest is eating it up, and you're not really making any progress in trying to reduce the debt. And people have become slaves, really, to this commercial system. It's interesting. We don't really want to deny ourselves. So we go out on the limb on credit, and we purchase things, and we sign the contracts and so forth. But how many people today are overburdened with their debt that they are facing today? And so it's one of those things. You become really a slave to, as a debtor, you become a slave to the ones that you owe the money to, and it's a sad situation that has been brought upon our world today as the result of all of the debt that has been incurred as people are buying things on credit and all. The fruit that thy soul lusted after have departed from thee, and all things which were